Welcome to the Horror Hangout, a podcast where film fans watch the best and worst horror movies of all time and have a lovely talk about them. My name is Andy Conduit Turner, and today I am joined by a very special guest. I'll tell you all about her. It's Georgia Cook. She is a character designer, voice actor, and writer. Welcome to the show, Georgia. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Oh, well, I couldn't have thought anyone better, bearing in mind all the things we'll talk about that you're up to. And we were talking just before we got recording that we've worked together on a few things, we've spoken on a few occasions, but
We have.
never actually seen each other's faces while we were talking. It's been strange.
Yeah, it's like a face reveal. It's brilliant.
Good stuff. So excited to have you on with us. Oh, in case everyone's wondering, I haven't just not got round to introducing Ben. Um, we didn't record last week. Ever so sorry for that. Lots going on, but we're making up for it with almost a horror hangout red and blue situation here. So right now, you're joining us on. I'm claiming it. I'm recording first. This is red version. Georgia and I are going to talk about the film of the week, which of course will be Grave Encounters if you've read the title. And Ben will be catching up on what would have been last week's movie, Abigail, with our guest Ed. They'll cover that. Listen to them both. My goodness, for a podcast you get for free, you're certainly getting your money's worth. So let's proceed with our version. Georgia, where do we begin? Before we get into your writing, maybe, and everything else that you do, we'll be here
Yeah.
for a little while. But how did you become a horror fan? Where did it strike you when you were growing up?
Oh gosh, I'm asked this a couple of times when I talk about my writing stuff, and it's always like a different thing each time. So I think it was a collection of horrors that I found when I was very young. Especially, there was a show on British TV, you might have seen it, called Grizzly Tales for Gruesome Kids.
I'm
Uh,
really familiar with the title, but I don't know. Is it a
Oh, it's horrifying. I've looked up some episodes since then as an animator just to see if it's just as scary as I remembered. And they are horrendous. They're like short animated stories that was on CITV back in the day. And it's just child murder relentlessly.
that's
With sort
ITV
of
for you?
a vague moral at the end. And I think I watched a couple of episodes of that, like aged 8 or 9, changed my brain chemistry completely. Uh, Along with I used to collect Goosebump books from charity shops, as one does, followed by like Point Horror,
Yeah.
which is sort of slightly older Goosebumps. And yeah, I think it went from there, and here I still am.
And obviously what a pathway has been carved out. So as a reader of horror fiction to what many of our listeners, certainly, if not lots of people around the world will know, is a prolific horror writer, right?
I've written a few things. Yeah.
For me, Georgia, it's Stephen King, maybe his son, and then you. Like in terms of output that I've definitely listened to and enjoyed, we worked together on some of the Hawk and Cleaver Halloween projects, and it's always a
Yes.
treat when we see one of your episodes on the other stories. Bit
Oh,
of a
thank you.
bit of a double or maybe even triple threat between you. Voice lots of them wonderfully,
Yes.
and a writer. Which end of it did you start in? Were you writing first and then voicing?
I think I was writing first. Yes. I mean, when I first started writing, which was not too long ago, back in 2020, like the other stories was on the list of like things that I really wanted to try get into, kind of my white whale sort of thing. And then when I got a couple of stories in with you guys, I was so excited. And I'd also just started kind of dipping my toe into voice work. So I can't remember how I submitted. I think you were looking for voices at the time, so I read a couple of stories just to see if I was what you wanted, and I'm still here.
Yeah, always one of the voices I look forward to when I listen into an episode. And to be fair, when I'm not actually working on one of the specials that we've sometimes done, actually try not to read the stories in advance when they come into the hopper for selections, because it's nice for someone to read you a story, isn't it? It's nice to hear
Yeah.
something fresh that you haven't read for yourself beforehand. So, well, wonderful stuff. If you're with us here now and you haven't listened to the other stories, there's lots from both of us here. I would say more from Georgia.
Yeah.
She's all over it, but loads of really great stuff. And not only is there a wonderful back catalogue that you can get through, but you're cooking up a little something special for Halloween, right?
I am, yes. I've voiced the past couple of Halloween episodes, which has been so much fun. But this year I am putting pen to paper and writing it for you, which has been so much fun.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? And like it's such a different experience. I had this myself a few years past with Old Mill Lane we did a few years ago, and then The Witching Hour, which you voiced some of the characters
Yes,
for
I
as
think that was the
well.
first year I joined.
Yeah, that was yeah, you were incredible on
Oh,
that. And it's a fun game show running it, isn't it? You can imagine all the work that Luke and Carl and Dan and all the others put into it when it's all of a sudden you saying, my goodness, there's a bit of admin to do as well as writing this.
yes, yeah, seeing everything behind the scenes and what everyone has to do just to bring this together. It's such a beautiful collaborative process. I'm already in awe of all the work everyone's doing, so I can't wait to see it become a finalized piece.
And it's so nice when you are kind of pulling the strings of one of these and seeing it come together. When you hear the other bits of audio come in, I still remember I was on a dog walk, like in a literally a dark wood, when I heard some of the final audio from when we did the horrors of Old Mill Lane. Like Emily Booth put in some of the last sort of climax thing. I was listening to it out on a dark dog walk, and
Oh
genuine, I was like,
gosh,
this is a little bit scary. I've got
it's a
to.
bit spooky.
And I was like, I'm quite scared, and I wrote these words. So it's so nice when you get to hear it done together. Obviously, we just hit halfway to Halloween, so we are
Yes, we're
on our
getting
way.
there.
Um, yeah, so we are well on our way to Halloween, so it will be here before you know it, and you'll be able to hear your Halloween special. I know it might be a bit early to reveal too much. Is there anything you can tease the guys with so far?
I mean, I've just putting the finishing touches onto episode 3 at the moment, and I don't know what we can reveal really. I think the film we're discussing today is probably quite a good taster of what might be to come.
Inspired by. Okay.
Yes.
Sort of, yeah, a little sideways look. So if you like some of the things you see in Grave Encounters and
Hmm.
want something I couldn't tell you, I couldn't possibly comment, possibly even scarier and better, then keep tuned to the overall Hawk and Cleaver socials. I mean, the same people run the socials, so you can be sure Ben will be sending out on the Horror Hangout pieces as well. We will share more as they come, but I mean, second only to the Horror Hangout stuff you've been writing, you've also been writing for another huge, I would argue, horror related franchise as well, right? You've been doing
Absolutely.
some wonderful work in the universe of Doctor Who, right? Tell us a bit more about that.
Yes, I mean, I do again quite a lot of audio work for Big Finish, who are sort of the extended universe of Doctor Who. They take the Doctors and characters that have been on the show, have possibly regenerated or left, and they create more stories, very often using the same actors from the television show, or if those actors aren't available, really good sound alikes. So I've been working with them for a couple of years, and I think you're right. It's Doctor Who is built on such a foundation of horror and kind of childhood spookiness. I think they're very much connected.
Yeah, and I don't know, certainly growing up, my parents would always comment, or, even the announcers when it was on TV would talk about people watching Doctor Who from behind the sofa, right? Which, bearing in mind, it's variable budget over the years. Certainly, when I was
Yes.
growing up as a child, I just caught while I was in a point where I was forming memories. Sylvester McCoy was Doctor Who when I was small watching TV, and yeah, still to this day, I could tell you of images of what I think, having tried to Google it and look through wiki pages, what I think were sea devils coming out of a sea, and being quite terrified of those. And also, I feel like this may be a one and done monster of the week that was a Sylvester McCoy man. A like a leopard fellow riding about on a
Oh,
horse,
yes. I think I know the ones you're talking about. Yes.
chasing Ace around a playground. I still can vividly remember being quite afraid of those. It was up there between those two Doctor Who sites and then that scarecrow from that Round the Twist episode. Awful,
Oh my
awful,
God,
horrific
yes. I
childhood
remember around the
memories.
twist. Yes.
Yeah, great, terrifying children's programs. And now here you are writing some stories for them. Tell us how did you get into that?
Yeah, well, it was through my horror work. Ironically, I had stuff that I was putting out there into anthologies and podcast work that was sort of available to find online. And when a writer couldn't write a particular thing called an interlude, which in Big Finish is basically a 10,000 word long prose piece that is read by an actor. So very much like what we do with the other stories. The producers contacted me and said, well, we see you do horror, and we wondered if you could write something sort of in the vein of Ghostlight, which is a story from the Seventh Doctor with his companion Ace, for people who aren't aware of classic Who, which is a spooky, very strange, very surreal haunted house serial. And I said, yes, absolutely, please do, because my partner had just gotten me back into Doctor Who at the time, and I just started listening to Big Finish. So they let me write something for them, and it got recorded, and you can find it online. It's part of, if you buy a certain episode of something with the Seventh Doctor, you'll get my episode free. And then they asked me back a couple more times to write some 11th Doctor stuff. And I'm still there, and they're still letting me do it, which is wonderful.
Oh, and I must say I need to catch up on all of these things, obviously, because content is infinite. And then as soon
Oh,
as
yes.
actually I think it is fairly global, because in the UK, if you're listening locally, then all of Doctor Who, all of it that wasn't lost in the archives is now
Yes, you can
all of
find
it
it online.
all on the iPlayer now. And I believe if you're overseas, it's on Disney Plus everywhere else in the world.
Yes, yes,
So
and the new
you
stuff will
can
also be coming up.
so
So
you
it's
can
everywhere.
you can go back, and if you're anything like me, and unfortunately I am, I when it all became there, I was like, oh, I could go back and watch all of this from the very I could commit to an infinite amount of television, couldn't
All
I?
of Doctor Who.
Yeah. I mean, straight away when it all got on there, I thought, oh, because we have a couple of fans. Aaron Truss, who's been on as a big Doctor Who fan, he has been advocating for us to do a special episode on our favorite Doctor Who horrors. And I was like, I
Yes.
can't talk about this knowledgeably unless I go back and watch everything. But yeah, I mean, you're a horror writer and a Doctor Who fan. Are there any particular monsters or particular stories that really stand out for you as horror essentials from the world of the Doctor?
I think every child of a certain age has seen Blink and been terrified by the Weeping Angels in the 10th Doctor era. Uh, and the Family of Blood. Again, I think that was 10th Doctor and Martha. Um, Gosh, I think Doctor Who is made of brilliant, terrifying monsters and brilliant, terrifying episodes. I mean, like you said, there's a legacy of hiding behind the sofa when Doctor Who comes on, even when it's not intentionally a particularly spooky episode. I think in so almost everything you'll find something.
Yeah, no, you'll have to keep me honest, because I am not a very good watcher of Doctor Who, in the fact that I am very sporadic. I did watch from the reboot series. I was bang on all the way through Christopher Eccleston, and then the final series of David Tennant. But then I moved abroad, and the internet wasn't what it is today. It was hard to keep up on these things, so I fell off it around that point for a number of years, and I've caught the odd one sporadically since. Even when it isn't a scary physical monster that you can see on screen, I think Doctor Who has always been especially good at doing some quite psychologically terrifying ones.
Oh
And
yeah.
I believe it was a David Tennant episode. Isn't there some creature? It's got elements of the Thing to it, and who is the other? And it's some kind of almost invisible creature that begins by copying what you say and then repeating
Oh,
things.
Midnight.
Terrifying,
Yes, I think that one was
horrible.
written deliberately to be quite a not a cheap episode, but quite an easy episode to shoot. And yeah, it turned out to be one of the creepiest ones in the 10th Doctor.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that one's so good.
there's some wonderful, terrifying stuff on there. So, I mean, in many ways, Georgia, the I've cheated a little bit, because normally we have a guest on and we do some intro with them and find out about their horror history, and then we move on to the news. But for me, two things that you're working on that are coming up right now, that you count as news as well. But we will have another couple of bits that I will share. Obviously, we're heading towards sort of trailer season, and we're starting to gear up with film festivals for the year as well. So if you're listening this week, the tickets for Dead Northern, if you're in the UK, have just been announced. The lineup is still following, but they are at the back end of September. I believe early bird tickets are now already available. The link in all of their socials there. I'm yet to go to a Dead Northern live yet, but everyone I speak to says that it's a fantastic film festival. It's really friendly. There's loads of social elements on there. End of September. It's not too cold yet. Um, I'm really hoping we can make it there this year now. And if you want to get tickets, I believe for the next month, they will be at early bird prices. Um, Obviously, ahead of the announcement being fully made of what the lineup looks like. But if you look at their history over the last 4 years before this, their fifth anniversary, they ain't going to let you down. You're going to see some good independent horror movies there from all over the world. If you're available, it's very nice. I mean, Georgia, not that I would disparage great things that happen in London, but you get your fair share. If you want to
We
come up
do.
to something that's up north, come and support Dead Northern. You'll have a very good time. Um, if you're even further north and impatient, we know also that during the end of the second week in May, just next month, a couple of weeks away now, um, we already spoke about it that Dundead is going to be on at the DCA in Dundee, a celebration of slasher movies in particular. A couple of episodes ago, we gave the full lineup, but since our last bit of news, they have announced their season opener, which is a film I've now instantly forgot at Sting. I've forgotten the title for a moment. They see, Ben, I can't do this without you. Sting is going to get its UK premiere at Dundead this year, a couple of weeks before it gets general release in the rest of the country. How are you with spiders, Georgia?
I'm I'm the designated spider putting out the windower in my
In your
relationship,
house?
so I'm pretty good with spiders.
Yeah. I think this one would challenge even the
Uh,
most stoic of Spider. Have you seen the trailer for this yet? It's getting a
I have
little bit of play.
not.
Big kind of arachnophobia energy about it,
Oh,
similar to
excellent.
Shudder's latest one, Infested, which I haven't seen yet, but looks very good. But a little girl finds a little spider in the house and keeps it, and then it's quite a vicious looking spider and it's going to grow. And even in the trailer, we're seeing a very large spider terrorizing
Oh,
people around like a tenement building. Animals are going missing, elderly neighbors are going
oh
missing,
God.
an exterminator's being dragged around the frame of a door. It looks like a lot of
Oh,
fun,
looks a lot of
a
fun.
nice creature feature. So yeah, that is getting its premiere over at Dundead. So again, if you are looking for a UK premiere, you want to lord that over your friends on Instagram, get yourself up to Dundee, get yourself some tickets, have a lovely time out of it. Nice people up there, and support some of our other film festivals that we have around the country. Um, Other than that, if you're looking forward to horror in the future, and to be honest, Georgia, we should really have a word with them about carrying some of the things that you're working on, get the promotion going for your Halloween special over on the other stories. If you are a reader of magazines and also independent magazines as well, Starburst magazine this month has a Future of Horror feature. The entire episode pretty much is dedicated to horror content, upcoming horror movies, previews of all the great horror stuff that's coming out there. So you've got your big titles that you're going to see mentioned. You're talking about the Crystal Lake Friday the 13th base series. You're talking about your Aliens Romulus, but also familiar faces from those of you that have listened to our Fright Fest episodes. You even see on the cover, this is how I knew about the episode, when the director of Book of Monsters and How to Kill Monsters, Stuart, posted about it. Star of the movie, Lindsay Crane, was right there on the cover next to Abigail, next to Art the Clown. Wonderful to see independent horror hitting the cover of magazines and UK independent
Yeah.
horror as well for a magazine available internationally. Lovely recognition. If you like to keep up on our news and would like it in a readable format without having to get the transcript of this episode, and you can do that, but read a whole magazine about it. It's got pictures and everything and have a great time. Right, that was my news. Is there anything that you're looking forward to, Georgia, that you're still looking forward to coming out this year? Any horror that you've got on the horizon?
Oh, I think you're talking about it in your Ben's talking about it in your next episode, but I'm very much looking forward to going to see Abigail.
Abigail is
It
a lot of fun.
seems I'm getting geared up to see it at the cinema. Me and my partner, we love some vampire horror.
Oh,
So
in that
that's
case, you're in for a great
oh
time.
yeah.
Some wicked vampire lore. You'll have a good laugh. No spoilers for Ben's episode, though. I will send in my review, but yeah, mild spoilers. I liked it a lot. It was very good. Um, Talking of films watched, then, what were you watching section? Anything you've been watching, reading, playing, enjoying in the world of horror recently? You're not here every week, Georgia, so you haven't got to do the
That's
last 7
true.
days.
What have I been doing? I've been watching, well, my partner has got me back into watching found footage at the
Oh,
moment.
wicked.
So we watched some Cloverfield quite recently. Um, which is, is it a monster movie? Is it more of a horror movie? It's kind of
Yeah.
straddling that vein. Um, what else have I been doing? I've been working on a lot of stuff, so I unfortunately haven't been able to consume much media
Yeah. In the bunker,
recently.
writing stuff of your own. I know how it is.
Yes. I have been going back through, I've got a huge collection of best new horrors,
Oh, wicked.
which I purchased at the very start of the pandemic, kind of impulse buy. And I've been slowly working my way through all of them. I've got quite a few on my bedside table at the moment, actually. So that's been my
Yeah,
slow consumption of horror short stories.
that gets bad, doesn't it? When you have got multiple things on your bedside table
Oh,
and then
yes.
something will happen, like you have visitors or you have to do some dusting, and then it's like, oh, just put these in the drawer for a minute, and then you forget you've got those in the drawer, and then get new
Yes.
things off the bookshelf to rack up in front of your bedside table, and the cycle begins anew.
Yes, definitely. And then you forget that you've got the thing, and then you're like, oh, I should probably try reading this. And then you've got to start it from the beginning again.
Yeah, I've lost my place. I've started Catch 22 about 4 times, despite it being a wonderful book, and I've loved that first 2/3 of it. I've read several times. I'm sure the last third will be brilliant
So
if
it's great.
I ever get to it. Um, I watched a couple of things, did a little bit of catching up. I mean, there was an episode on it a couple of weeks ago while I was away working. Late Night with the Devil, still making big headlines.
Yes. I hear it's pretty good for for, well,
Yeah,
I hear it's really good. um,
phenomenal. I know there was a little
yeah.
bit of controversy about some alleged AI art
Yes,
in the
that's why
background
I've
there.
been avoiding it, unfortunately.
It's on Shudder now,
Mm.
so I figure even if you aren't sure about some of the production values of the choice to engage with AI artworks, which I absolutely agree with. If you have a Shudder account anyway, it's on there, and it
Mm.
shouldn't take away, I guess, from the fact that I think the entire cast, but particularly David Dashmalchian, who is, I think, well recognized as a character actor at this
Mm.
point. It's really nice to see him get a leading role because, in my opinion, he is an actor who can lead a film, can carry a film. Um, and he does phenomenal. I think it really does recreate that sort of very authentic American talk show like kind of
Mm.
feel to it. Um, in the same way, dare I say, because someone else almost certainly has, and I don't want to be too reductive, but almost a US equivalent to like a Ghost Watch that we have
That's
here.
exactly what I was going to say,
Yeah.
is that's the vibe that I get from it, is it's kind of a spiritual successor to
Yeah.
Ghost Watch,
Yeah. And we've
which is
seen,
always a good thing to be.
yeah, we've seen a few of those recently, maybe not so high profile as this has become. But we had Haunted Ulster Live at
Mm.
like an Irish sort of 90s coded Ghost Watch as well. That was at Fright Fest last year.
Mm.
It was also really good. There is another one. I'll have to put it in the show notes. It's got like a very extensive name, like something spooky mixtape, and it is almost like recorded off American television of the time, and it's got that sort of haunted quality to it as well. But it's a fun format. I mean, we did similar with the Horrors of Old Mill Lane, except it was
Mm.
podcast formulated as well, like having that metafiction element. I think there's a lot of fun that you can have with that
Yeah, I
kind of
think that's
formatting.
always such a good, I don't, addition to have into something mixed into the creation. It's
Yeah.
it's definitely come back in a big way recently in horror, or it's never really left particularly. but
I
it
think
gives such a real world element.
it's a really nice way, I think, of having because we interact with our entertainment so much
Mm.
more than we did. I think it's why films like Deadstream were really riding the wave of streaming and live streaming
Mm.
content, which is now completely available. There are entire platforms dedicated to people live streaming and reacting a thing to another piece of entertainment, or just being out there. And the fact that we do carry around pieces of equipment in our pockets now that are powerful enough, sound,
Yes.
video, and broadcast equipment, that you can just do entire shows of people experiencing these things live. um I think it's really, really powerful. You can get some really great storytelling with it, and
Yeah.
we probably
And
haven't
it's
seen
ripe
it.
for horror.
Yeah, and we haven't seen it maybe since the first examples, the early examples, like Blair Witch, which I think is almost, despite the fact that Blumhouse are now looking at a reboot of that,
I was gonna say, yeah, they're making another
another
one.
one. It's You can do something clever with it. I think it has to be just right, because I think Blair Witch exists in a perfect time when a technology was just so. You had the internet so you could look things up on the internet, but it wasn't such a great resource that you could definitely establish whether this was real or not
Yes, there was
real.
that murky line of not knowing whether or not it had actually happened,
Yeah.
which added to the horror. It still does, even though we know it was all made up now, but it still adds to the mystique of this film.
Yeah. Being a teenager, seeing the Blair Witch, and then, going back with a group of friends and having a sleepover because we were that cool. Maybe someone had like a couple of cans of beer with them, and then one of my friends genuinely having a little bit of a nightmare about it, and to the point of saying, oh, like, I almost feel like, we live quite near some woods, my parents did. It's like, oh, I almost feel like I'm being called to the woods. And it's like, the bloke, like, real or not, like, if you believe this one fully, is set in America. So
Yes, got an ocean in the way. It's okay.
you're quite safe. I don't know that it's within the Blair Witch's jurisdiction that she's going to come to. I mean, there's danger in the woods. A lot of that woods has been taken over by a quarrying company. You could get into an industrial accident, but I don't think that an American-based witch is going to
American
get you.
Witch.
I think you're going to be a-okay. Bless him, he's all right. Other than that, the only other thing I've watched is another little film on Shudder. Bag, almost go very glottal stuff. Baghead is what I've seen.
Oh, I saw the trailer for that. Is it? Do you recommend it?
Um, it's okay. I can see why it came to streaming. As a streaming, I think you might be a little disappointed if you had done, especially in this economy, a cinema trip
Mm.
on it. It does have an interesting premise to it. Could it have been? I think it could have been a really powerful short story.
Mm.
The length of a film maybe plays out a little bit, and it does lose its. It's one of those things where they establish rules to how these things work, but then both sides, both our human characters and the antagonist, go, the rules of operating with this curse and this haunting are exactly like this, unless I choose to break them in this very
Oh, yes, of
specific way.
course.
So there's a little bit of that in it, but overall, I still had quite a bit of fun with Baghead, and it is a really compelling short. Premises that a girl inherits a pub from her estranged father after he passes away, um, and he leaves her a video and says, "Look, now your name is on the deeds. Unfortunately, I didn't want this for you, but now you are responsible. You're the keeper of this curse." And then a man comes, and through him being a previous user of this thing, there is a creature in the basement, and if you give it an item that belonged to a person, it takes the bag off its head, and it is that person who it can resurrect people from the dead, and you can have a couple of minutes to talk to a departed loved one.
Mm.
But there is still this creature and this malevolence behind it, and if you talk to it for too long, then it isn't your loved one anymore. It's this thing, and it inhabits the body. So elements of talk to me about it, where there's like a ritual that you can
Yeah.
play with, and you can follow the rules or not follow the rules with deadly results and things like that. There's some interesting things to it. Execution maybe veers a little because it struggles with length, but
Mm.
but it's good. I think there's some interesting things there. If you find yourself at home on a sort of a wet spring afternoon that we're having a lot of recently, you could do a lot worse.
Yeah, all right. I'll put it on my list. I remember it gave me the vibes of an adapted short story,
Yeah,
but then I think some of the CGI was a little bit
yeah,
unsure. But I'll definitely give it a
yeah.
watch.
CGI aside, I think the physical delivery of the character itself, when it is just a person with a bag on the head moving around, that's quite creepily done. It's quite good. But apart from those, unless you've got anything else you wanted to shout out that you've been enjoying recently, Georgia,
I don't think so. I think we're
in that case, then we
good.
shall go to the film of the week, which is, of course, Grave Encounters. Grave Encounters is a found footage horror movie written and, well, directed by the Vicious Brothers. I don't have their actual names. But of all the brothers you like, the Vicious Brothers, probably some of the best choices to make a scary horror movie.
Yes.
Um, IMDb 6.1 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes got a 49% critic score, 65% audience score. It has a 2.9 star rating average on Letterboxd. And here are a few choice reviews for you. Drew Clark gave it 2.5 stars and said, spent the whole movie waiting for something to happen, only for the movie to get worse once it did. Nicholas Farron, a 2-star movie, not a single grave was ever encountered. Lauren gives it 4 stars and says, despite the hate that this found footage horror film gets, I really love it. For me, it's very solid all round, great setting, really effective scares, and a brutal ending that makes me think of other great found footage films like Wreck, before Grave Encounters time, and Gonjiam, Haunted Asylum, that came after its time. Mason also gave it 4 stars, who said, there was something fun, there was some fun, freaky ass shit, pleasantly surprised. How did you encounter Grave Encounters? How did it come to you?
I think I first encountered Grave Encounters at university. I'm pretty certain. I was talking to my partner about this, and I was so sure this had been made in like 2006. I think because it's trying to evoke a kind of early 2000, late 90s vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized it had been made in, I think it's
2000,
2011.
yeah, 2011, and a sequel the year after.
Yeah, so I must have been kind of just finishing school, just heading into university when I first watched it. And I think I remembered having that same kind of 50-50 split. It seems to be right down the middle,
Yeah,
people's reactions to it, and think really finding the setting and the first section of it really quite affecting. And then slowly, as like the ending comes towards you, you can't, it does lose it a little bit.
yeah,
But I've always remembered it, especially certain aspects that I'm sure we'll discuss. Yeah, and it became part of my inspiration for what I'm writing at the moment. So
yeah,
it's I've been revisiting it recently.
yeah, and it really does lean into that kind of, as you say, that 90s vibe, sort of the in the era of like sort of guerrilla television making as
Mm.
well, where cameras were more accessible to people. You didn't necessarily need the same absolutely huge Hollywood budget. And 2011 probably would have been, I'd have to look up, I'm sure US versions apply, but for a UK audience, invokes like the most haunted era of
Oh,
television
yes.
as well,
I think
right?
it's especially the opening of this film is like peak Ghost Adventures. You can really feel what they're aping with it, just oozing out of every pore. And it's, as someone who watched a lot of ghost hunting TV shows, it's quite delightful.
Yeah,
A good, really good space.
they're hitting all of the markers. There is, the
Yes.
the person who is sensitive to the
Oh,
spirits.
yes.
There's orbs. There's your
There's
tech
leather
guy.
jackets.
Yep. There's leather jackets for days in this movie. There is the host who has to be just, sort of 5 to 10% more attractive than the other people that are in it, and have almost like a Ryan Seacrest, but the
Yes.
Ryan Seacrest you have at home, um,
Yes.
presenting energy about them. Um, and one of my favorite elements as this film begins as well, obviously you have to have the opener. I'm not sure which
Yes.
which I prefer. The paranormal activity style, where you just get some text that says like, on the 5th of November, the police found this videotape. They have presented
Yes.
it here in cinemas for some reason for the public's awareness. If you know the location of these people, please phone in. We don't get that this time. This film opens with the producer, right? The
Yeah.
guy who owns the network or something saying,
Being
hey,
like, I'm not sure why we're doing this, but yeah, this is real. Absolutely.
yeah, this is absolutely real footage. We have only edited it down for time because there was actually
Yes.
72 hours of footage or something obscene like that.
Yes.
We edited it for time, but
Into a
otherwise,
tight hour and a half for
yeah,
your viewing pleasure.
yeah, these people are dead. I cannot stress this enough.
Yes.
Yeah, and let me have a look at the staff. I mean, this is almost directly brought up in the sequel, but the people who are in this film, like a lot of these really successful adaptations that come from found footage, not tremendously recognizable faces, right? They're very
Yeah.
rarely are the people that are like, oh, you were in this TV show for years, or you're really, really familiar to me. They are people that they could be just people on the street. And that's not to say they're bad at acting, it's to say that you aren't taken out of it by the fact that they are.
Yes. I think a couple of them have since gone on to sort of more larger careers in film and television. I think especially the psychic guy they bring in, which is slightly disconcerting. We're like, oh no, I this isn't a Blair Witch. We're like, oh, these people, they could absolutely have vanished.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm pretty certain I've seen you in an episode of Law and Order.
Oh, that
But
I think that's prime for
yeah.
those things. Yeah, I'm just looking at here as well. So Mackenzie Gray, who plays the psychic, is in the Soska Sisters remake of Rabid, is in the Warcraft movie by Duncan Jones,
Yes.
and is in Man of Steel.
Yes.
So he's escaped that asylum and gone on to do some pretty big things.
So yeah, but I think definitely especially when you're watching it kind of with the view of it being in the early 2000s, it's everyone is just obscure enough that you're like, oh, you could maybe not be an actor, you could maybe just be a crew
Yeah.
member in this thing that you're just sort of catching.
Yeah, and I mean, before we go into the story of this one, we'll veer into where it sits amongst its peers, I guess, with other found footage. You've already conjured Cloverfield, which I think absolutely belongs
Oh
in the
yeah.
found footage horror genre. I'm not against kaiju movies in general, even the biggest ones being horror movies. Godzilla minus one was one of my favorite, I would consider, horror movies last year. Found footage or otherwise. So kaiju are in, big monsters are in,
Mm,
but
absolutely.
the haunted settings are definitely one spot. We've already mentioned the Blair Witch as well. Are there any others that that sort of stand on your Mount Rushmore of found footage
Mount Rushmore
movies?
of found footage. Um, I feel like Sinister isn't quite found footage, but the aspects of it that are found footage kind of belong
Yeah,
on the Mount Rushmore because it's so affecting, some of
yeah.
that stuff.
Some of the best parts of those. I've never
Yeah,
seen the Sinister sequel though. I haven't seen
neither
Eagle's
have I.
Revenge.
I've heard it's better to kind of just keep the first one.
Okay.
Um, yeah, this is why I forget every film I've ever seen in my life. I hear oh gosh, what are the really famous ones?
Oh, the Plows Keepy tapes. That's another
Yes, I've heard that.
yeah, I've not seen that one myself, but I mean, we've touched on some of the big ones, and I think uh, the way that we have in this one, and Grave Encounters leads into this very well. Found footage is, I think, for me, at some of its most effective. Oh, I've just realized another big one, Hell House LLC. I'm not sure if you've
Oh
seen
yes, of
those.
course. That's a brilliant one. I haven't seen the sequels. I've heard there's quite a few, and they're pretty good as well.
Pretty consistent, yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
remember the first one very
yeah,
fondly.
that's very good. But I think that has the similar thing, right? I think found footage, whether it's the woods in Blair Witch or a property like we have in this and Hell House, a creepy setting, a monster that or a threat that you cannot reliably perceive, these are the hallmarks of, I think, a great
Oh
movie, a
yes.
great
It's like
setting for
you're
this one.
trapped inside the mind of the person that's there, that's holding the camera. You don't get the benefit of being out from it with a, sweeping crane shot or
Yeah,
something. You are inside there, you are locked in. You can
yeah.
only see what they see,
You
and
see what they see, and
generally less.
if you don't quite see something as well, like goodness knows how people got by in the VHS days. Even
Yeah.
watching, this one, and I've seen Grave Encounters before. There were bits of it where you go, "Hang on, let's hit that back 10-second
Yeah.
button a couple of times. Let me see exactly what that was, and see what's going on as they ramp up that tension."
Mm.
Um, it's done to great effect, and I think the setting owes itself a lot here. So this is an abandoned hospital for like mentally ill people, but
Mm.
it was back in the days when they didn't have, and to be fair, our mental health services are still poorly funded and poorly understood today.
Yes.
But absolutely, compared to what they were then, honestly, we've got little to complain about, because absolute shit back then. And it was basically a prison where people were kept and abused and experimented on.
Mm.
So that's also accurate, but this is what the story is here. So they're visiting an old sort of Second World War era or thereabouts, an asylum, um, and it's a most haunted spot as these
Yes.
television crews go to investigate, and that's where we begin. I am going to have to pull up the letterbox so I can call these characters by name. So let me tell you who we have here. It's got like a turtles roll. So the Leonardo of the group is Sean, played by Sean Rogerson, who is Lance Preston, is who we're after
Yes.
here. So Lance Preston is your main guy. He is your Yvette Fielding. He's your leader of the pack, and he's there with his leather jacket and his black t-shirt, sort of a band t-shirt maybe, to tell
Oh
you
yeah.
that what's up, guys. Just before YouTube was a huge, and this would make a great YouTube
Oh,
series.
he would so be on TikTok.
Yeah, he'd be there, go into all his like most haunted places and doing his investigations. So Lance Preston is your host, your leader of the gang. He is assisted by Sasha Parker. Um, she is like a sound, like is she a sound engineer,
I
or like
think it's not very clear what she does. I think she's unfortunately kind of there to be the woman in the
the
group.
girl one?
Yes, as so often does happen in those old ghost hunting TV shows, there is always the woman. And I think she's kind of, I remember from the opening, she's a supernatural expert,
So she's
like an occult expert.
an occult expert, also can use a camera, so that's
Yes,
handy. Then you have TC Gibson, who is the
the
slightly
camera
sportier,
operator.
shoutier sport, but he's got a family. He's the camera operator, the guy who is mostly behind the cameras for most of it. You have Houston Gray, who is our he's our psyche, he's our Derek
Yes.
Acora of the group, who's coming in to get the vibes of the place. And then you have Matt White, who is rounding out our gang, and he's your technical whiz. He's Donatello.
Yeah.
He's got them. He's got the machines. He has got and they even do like the orgy of evidence of all the great equipment that we can
Oh, I
see will
love
go
that one
wrong
so much.
later.
All the EMP readers and the Geiger counters and all the standing cams in every room. That's how you know you've got a good ghost hunting show, is when they bust out the EMPs.
Yeah. And then they've also got the Macaulay Culkin little dictaphone in case you're gonna get
Yeah.
like a little voice message from any of the ghosts as well. And what I will call out in this bit is we do get quite an interesting bit that then plays into some of the scares later in the movie. And you see when we have a session where Matt goes around, and it's not agonizing. We don't see him set up all 10 of the cameras. We see him set up from like maybe 6 through 10, and we see him switch on the camera, looking straight down the barrel of that camera, setting it going. And an important factor for us later, then with each of these cameras, as he sets them rolling, we see the time start to tick up,
Yes.
as the amount of footage which has been captured by this camera. And
Yeah, I especially loved that bit because you know from context clues that they're only supposed to be there about 8 hours.
yeah,
So from like it's like 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
yeah,
They're
that's
only
right.
supposed to be there. And then the time slowly gets longer and longer, and you're very aware of it, even through camera cuts. I thought that was such a clever idea.
Yeah, it's a nice way to do, and to this day, I mean, even now, not a great deal longer. I mean, longer than we'd like it to be. We're all getting older than we'd like, but 2011 to now, I feel there are modern films that come out that don't have that same respect for an audience, where they would have to say, "Well, look, I've been running this timer, and I can tell you that actually we've been here for 21 hours."
Yes.
Whereas we get a little bit of deniability from the characters. They're like, "Well, my phone, like, it should be later. Why isn't it later?" But then we can see as an audience member, and it doesn't feel it necessary to point it out. Like, it doesn't have to flash, or it doesn't have to do
You just know.
doesn't have to go to a cutaway
Mm.
where that producer guy says, "No, if you'll notice, this camera's actually been
Yeah.
running for 27 hours." It does have that kind of respect and confidence in their audience, that it can just allow us to pick that up for ourselves, that even before the characters start to notice that this has been longer than you expected it to be.
Yes. I think there's so much in this film, especially at the start, to really be commended from a storytelling aspect, I thought. Like when they're going through all of the major locations in this building, sort of in the same vein as you would, sort of interviewing people that work there. I think it was the janitor
Yeah,
and someone who's doing or who did construction work on it, kind of getting these little stories and kind of pointing out places and things that are haunted and things that will, hopefully be harkened back to. I thought it
yeah.
was all really good setup for things that you can be like, oh, now I know something horrific is going to happen with that window later because you've mentioned it.
Yeah, you've mentioned that, like, oh, some of your construction workers got spooked by the window. The only person that seems to be having a good old time in this film is the guard, like the groundskeeper outside, and it's like,
Yes.
nothing scary has happened here ever. I have
Yes.
the nicest time.
I'm just here. I'm doing good. I did like that you saw a particular part of Lance's character, in him, desperate to amp up this show, probably to the detriment of everyone around him by bribing the gardener to make up a story.
So, oh, I saw a ghost in the window once.
Yeah.
And yeah, and this is when, and it is like, maybe this is where, like, you see the difference in the review scores. I feel like you would get a different experience from this film depending on your fondness and your memories related to this type kind of television. Um, I have no desire to be in the mind of a 16-year-old, but were I to be able to do that, and I imagine if they weren't growing up with these kind of shows, it might feel agonizing for them. Like, why isn't anything happening
Yes.
yet? What is all of this build up? Why are they
I
just
think
talking to the gardener?
so. Where are the spooks?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you do sort of have to have either grown up or be very fond of a very particular kind of television from a very particular era.
yeah.
I mean, I'm not very aware of sort of the kind of stuff that we have these days in regards to this, but I feel like we, apart from was it the Battersea Poltergeist is kind of the newest edition of this where
The
it's
Battersea
kind of this.
Poltergeist. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
coming back in an audio format, and then
Yes.
Battersea Poltergeist. I mean, I almost mentioned it in news because I think a new series of Danny Robbins' Uncanny starts tomorrow.
Yes. See,
Uncanny US
I
is,
was so I was sort of for a very long time unaware of what that was. I thought it was a scripted thing. I thought it was like the Magnus Archives or
yeah,
something that was pretending to be real but wasn't. And then I watched the TV version of it and I realized, oh no, it's very, very serious.
yeah,
So I think it's kind of it's not quite in that weird, slightly camp 90s vein, but it's the new version of what
yeah.
that used to be. But the vibe of it is very different.
And I think it's still very characterful. I
Mm,
think I've mentioned him on the show before because I think he's a fantastic writer as well. Have you
mm.
seen Danny Robbins 222 at the theatre?
No, I haven't. I've heard it's brilliant. I didn't realize he'd written that.
Oh, you must. It's very, very good. I think I'm not sure if it's still playing in London. It did a tour. I saw it in Edinburgh a couple of months ago,
I
and it
know
is,
it's a different different
yeah,
lead actor. They
they
rotate them.
they rotate the cast. But
Mm,
oh, if you get the chance, it's really good. Really, really good. And you can see as someone who's watched Uncanny the TV series and has like listened to, I'm up to date on the series. So much of the plot of the play has been so heavily influenced by the investigations and the stories and the just the mechanics of hauntings and things that they've investigated over the course of the series that have been built into this piece of really, really tightly scripted and well, the gang that I saw deliver it really well performed as well. Fiction and the next series of Uncanny, I'm not sure if I'm a bit sad about it or I'm looking forward to it, but they're going to the US for the next series, which obviously has another whole dimension of of interactions with the uncanny and the spooky and
I think they sort of process their hauntings slightly differently over there to the way that we do, so it'll be interesting to see what he does with it.
And I'm pretty sure from the trailer we get a Bigfoot mention as well for this new series as well. So
yes, it's the US.
Yeah, it's the US. So we've got a Bigfoot. I imagine they maybe get a little bit more aliens out there as well. We've had UFO episodes for UK Uncanny, but I expect there's going to be some more over in the US because big country. There's a lot of sky to see unidentified flying objects in. Aside back into the stories, but yeah, you're right. This I feel is where this kind of ghost investigation has gone now. And to be fair, former guest of the show, Leanne, who came to join us for Hell House LLC, a paranormal investigator here in the UK. So I think that's the other angle we're taking here. Whereas it's maybe not on television, so
it's still the community is still thriving.
Communities are thriving. There are, I think, as well, in a post-lockdown world and where people actually more and more seek out experiences as well. I do think there are any number of haunted places now where these things are no longer just, hey, this is a really niche group thing and you would have to be a member of a society to be being involved in these things. I think an increasing number of historical buildings and things looking for ways to engage with the public and build up interest are doing more things related to the hauntings that are associated with them to get them in. I mean, ghost walks have been popular forever, but being able to stay at a place and go in there, yeah, I love a ghost walk. If you're ever up this way, Georgia, Perth Ghost Walk is wonderful.
I've done a couple in Edinburgh over the years and they are fantastic.
The Perth Ghost Walk is excellent. There's one bit when you end in the kirkyard and there are some genuinely incredibly carved graves, and there's one of them near where the tour finishes and the guy tells you some ghost stories and everything like that, and there is a grave in the graveyard and they have special permission to go in there after dark. The council give them the keys so we can go in.
Excellent.
So you walk around there in the dark, and we took our dogs with us and he scared some of the things because he barked at something. He saw a fox or something and barked just as he told a ghost story. But then as you get towards the end, there is a phenomenally carved grave. It's like a tomb, and there is like a widow like leaning over this thing, and it's stonework, but it's so finely done that it looks like this person has like a shroud, like a cloth.
I love those
over
that kind
their
of carving.
Head. Yes. And they're so phenomenally carved that even though it was not the tone of the thing we were at all, my wife and I were side-eyeing this thing every time because genuinely we were like, this is going to be like your partner and she's going to scare us on purpose to finish this tour. But it wasn't. It was just a statue. I still need to go back in the daytime and actually have a really good look at it because it was phenomenally made, and there are some really great stories out of it as well. But yeah, this is why I think if you have an interest in these things, this film is the most, can be even more effective for you. If I look nervous, anybody, I'm anticipating a jump scare. One of my dogs, this is a real life horror, is sitting dangerously close to where the other one is. He's going to step on him any minute. They're going to fight, and it will make me jump if I'm not prepared. I'm explaining this now just so it isn't look like, man has absolute, like, all of a sudden terrible fear.
It's such a terrifying movie.
Yeah, yeah, he was too scared, lose my horror credentials, too scared of Grave Encounters. But yeah, so this is the energy we've come into it, and I think we're talking a lot about the building because as a narrative piece, it's not like a lot of horror movies that we talk about where we're like, and then this happened, and then this is set up to this happened. Like the opening bit of this film kind of is a thing that just happens, and you can let it sort of wash over you, right?
Yeah, it sort of it builds the anticipation of, well, you're watching these things that you're sort of vaguely familiar with, and but you're also familiar with that you're watching a horror film. So you're like, okay, how is this going to go wrong? And when is it going to go wrong? And in what capacity? And it kind of it helps that you're aware of the expectations of the program. So you know as much as the characters know that they're going to be locked into this place overnight in order to do their investigation. That's always the second half of a ghost watch program.
Yeah.
Is you're going to be in there after dark with your cameras and your night vision, and you're hearing spooky noises and you're recording EMPs, and that's the whole thing. So you're like, okay, you're just waiting for that to happen. And then I think I can't remember if this is a normal thing, or if this is just for Grave Encounters, for again the anticipation. They reveal that they're deliberately going to be locked in for the night.
Yeah.
And I think Lance, in like his closing comments for the opening bit, is like, we couldn't escape even if we wanted to.
Yeah.
And you're like, great, because you can't.
Yeah. You're gonna be stuck. And that, they do that. We're gonna go on an 8-hour lockdown. And then I feel like whether it is part of the Foley or whether you get like the prison doors slamming noise that comes on and the chains clicking round.
And they're all there with their cameras, like,
they all get into
cool
their
posing.
agreed pose, and then there's some graffiti on the door that says like "Death awaits."
Death awaits in big letters.
Yeah, death awaits, and then the caretaker takes the chains off and lets them in, and then we see all those bits. They set up the cameras and they give us. I feel like you can almost tell the era of a film by the pieces of technology that you need to explain and the ones that you don't. Like a spy movie before 2010 explains what an EMP is and that it takes out electronic equipment. I feel sort of 2010 onwards, you don't need to explain an EMP anymore. Whereas in this one, we're in that era where a Geiger counter is older. Like every school child knows what a Geiger counter is, but he does need to explain like the equipment that detects cold spots, like those things. Like this is an infrared temperature meter. And like this is I think he explains electronic voice from, so what, EVP, right? So he explains like that's why we have this tape recorder. It's not just to play a clip from a film where you tell someone to keep the change, you filthy animal, to scare away the pizza delivery guy. This is where we can catch these messages from the ghosts. And I guess the final bit of setup is we actually get some ghost stories as well. They touch on the history and say, hey, this was really abusive. There was a doctor that did horrible experiments on people, and one day he got shanked up by lots of the inmates. But
he was murdered in
unfortunately,
his office.
he got horribly murdered and killed. But unfortunately for him, wasn't big news because because Babe Ruth died the next day.
Yeah.
The most famous baseball player that anyone not from America would still know.
I thought it was quite a good bit of world building. That was like, oh, you wouldn't have heard about it because it was on the same day as something even bigger.
Yeah, so that's why, like, a nice little throwaway thing is like, this is why you haven't heard of it, because it was big news. It wasn't big news because something bigger happened. It's like the end of Dog Soldiers, where no one heard about that horrible werewolf incident because England beat Germany at football. Yeah. So it wasn't on. So it just wasn't in any of the papers. So yeah, we never found about that, and we get like another local legend where like this is where one of the patients like killed themselves in a bath, and the bath still has kind of these sort of rusty stains all over it as well, so they can be a little bit creeped out by the environment a little bit more.
I think there's a window that whenever he locks, it always opens.
Yes, always opens. yeah, and then that's it really. They're in,
Mm.
they go around, they begin to do the level of experience that we are used to seeing on
Yes.
a ghost hunting program where, sorry if you have to find out this way, everybody, but unfortunately, from all the ghost hunting programs that have been on TV, we've never, and any of the ones I've seen or have heard about on the news, seen definitive proof of ghosts, because ghosts, if they are about, real tricky to catch on camera. They're
Yes.
not about to spoil it anytime soon. So we do see the standard ghost hunting show thing where, oh, was that an orb? Was that a creak that happened at the
Yes. Did
same
you hear
time?
something in the distance?
Yeah. People talking to ghosts like, if you are here, please push this window ever so slightly. And we get that level of thing, but it begins to escalate a little bit. And we have um, one of the characters who's speaking to the spirits, Sasha. We're going to commit that name to memory because we cannot just call her the girl one the whole time.
Sasha.
Sasha. Yeah, I guess, we can own this as part of the film as well. The characters' names are not particularly important, right? Like, of all the things we see depth and lore into, these people are not. We
Yeah, I
don't
think
we
they
don't we
are.
don't learn much
They're
about.
kind of their crew type archetype kind of thing.
Yeah,
You've got cameraman, you've got psychic.
yeah. There is the psychic man who has to be on a film set the next day. Matt, the technical guy, you know what he loves apart from technology? Smoky
Smoking.
cigarettes. Yeah.
He's told not to, he does it anyway.
He like you tell him that you're on a lockdown in a haunted house, he's gonna be punching darts day by day. He's all over it. Sasha, the girl one, gets a hair pulled while they're talking to them. And this is probably our first subtle bit
Mm.
of things are escalating. She's talking, and you see her hair sort of raised, as if by a spectral
Yes, I think while
by a
she's
spectral
talking into
hand.
the trying to get an EMP reading,
Yeah, yeah, it lifts up, and then we get, like, again, classic ghost hunter type things where you've got shaky cam footage of people
yes,
running down a corridor.
yeah, loud voices echoing around the halls.
Yeah, yeah, and this is the wonder of these programs as well. They're so effective because you put people in a tense situation and they will just scream and run around in the dark.
Oh, I think even in, I think anyone, if you put them in a dark building that they don't recognize or understand, you're going to feel something from it.
Yeah, it is. It's spooky. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
going into an abandoned hospital, I would say 9 out of 10 podcasters, do they have anything for this? Thankfully, I've lived a troubled youth, Georgia. So there was an old hospital near where I lived growing up, and that was condemned, not for ghost reasons, just because it was more profitable to turn it into flats eventually. And later on, my
Oh,
friend's
you're
got a
just
friend
waiting for it
would
to
live
fall
in one of
down.
those
Yeah.
flats. So an old hospital, when it was broken down, there were probably entertaining signs and things to be taken from there. So me and a group of friends as teenagers, we went in, and we were climbing up lift shafts and having lightsaber fights with old fluorescent tubes, and
I'd love to hang out with you as a teenager. That sounds
oh,
great.
incredibly dangerous. But, yeah, I think I still have a sign from the boiler, going into an old hospital with screwdrivers to say, in case,
Dismantle it.
yeah, oh, yeah, in many ways helping him out. But a very entertain. We got a toilet sign that went onto our sixth form common room door. We had a sign from the boiler that said, "In case of increased pressure, press knob." And I was like, "Well,
It's got a knob on it.
yeah," and I'm not leaving this hospital without it. And Rich and Kenny having to hide from the security guard. This probably poor man having to chase teenagers
He's
around
trying
the
to do his
thing.
job.
Just like, just don't want you to be killed in this dangerous condemned building. And then probably terrifying him because we were probably the shadowy shapes running around
Yes.
and laughing like
The
children
laughter
in
of children,
dark
yes.
hospital. It was like 1998. That man's probably like, I'm on a night shift and I'm earning £6 an hour. This is not worth it. Um, yeah, very similar vibes to that. They have less of a fun time than we did, though, because unfortunately
Yes.
there are ghosts. Um, and this is when, I guess, does Matt disappear before the night
Mm.
ends. So this is where we first start to get things going awry.
Yes, I think because the camera operator, he manages to sort of avoid seeing some ghostly things. I think a wheelchair moves while
Yes.
he's on his phone, which is quite a lovely exchange he has with his kid, saying that he'll be back in the morning very soon and they'll go out for pizza. And you're like, oh no, you won't be back very soon and go out for pizza because you've just said that you will, so you're
Yeah.
doomed.
Now you're
Um,
cursed. Although if you were a
but yeah,
ghost, you think, don't mess with this guy. Pizza for breakfast. He's a loose unit. Fresh pizza. I mean, leftover
oh,
pizza for breakfast. Absolutely fine. Fresh pizza for breakfast.
we should
Uh,
just let him live. Just let him go. He's doing great.
yeah, too much of a legend, and like he is going to bring us down. We haven't got the creativity to outdo this man. Um, but
But I
they
think, from what I remember, I think they have the experience with the hair, and Lance tries to make it happen again because he is so desperate to catch something on
it's like
camera.
you can pull my hair if you want.
Yeah, please, yeah. And then, but I think it kind of crushes everyone's vibe, and they're like, "Well, we'll stay. We want to all go home now. We're done. Party's over. We've had our fun."
Yeah,
So they all go and wait in the big lobby of the
yeah,
hospital. And I think, yeah, Matt heads off to dismantle all of the cameras.
yeah,
And then he hears something in the distance that we don't. And he wanders out of shot. And that's the last we see of him for quite a while.
yeah. And the others go looking for him. They see his camera equipment sort of
Oh, they find
strewn
it
about the
scattered
floor.
everywhere.
I know. You think, oh, some of this is rented. Come on.
Yes.
You've been on sets and done recording stuff. Like I treat these things, as
Yes.
delicately like equip
Thousands of pounds right here.
yeah, like more delicate equipment like that isn't yours. Like if it's yours, it is almost a straight one-to-one analogy with a baby. Like when someone hands you their new baby to hold, you're like,
Yes.
oh my goodness, the slightest thing could go wrong. And then you see people's parents with their own babies and they're far more confident. They're like, hey, throwing
Just like, no.
this is what Matt is like with his camera equipment. He's just dashed it all over the floor while he's gone off to investigate a mysterious sound. But the others, they're unable to find it. And I guess, is this the moment when we see, well, do they? Oh no, that's a little bit later. So they're looking for him and they go down and then think, well, he'll turn up in a little bit. They sit in the lobby and nothing. Time
Yeah, no,
just,
nobody comes to get them at 8 a.m.
yeah. And this is where they begin to wander around and look for him more. And then they realize that they start to look for a way out and they can't find one and they're looking around. And I think it's at this point that at some point they realize, well, these windows are glass. How is it still dark? It
Yeah,
should
it's
be
like
about
10 a.m. now,
yeah,
and it should be light outside, but it's still pitch black.
yeah. And this is when we begin to get the realization, we already touched upon it. You look at those timers that are going up and we see them on the static cameras, and it is at this point like 13 hours. It's
Yeah,
continuing to go along. And this is where it's effective stuff. I feel like
I
I'm
think this
talking
is
by
the
rating this film up.
yeah. This is my favorite part of the movie is this middle section where they realize they're trapped inside the hospital and time doesn't mean anything and space doesn't mean anything anymore. They're totally at the whims of this building. And we haven't even seen any ghosts, really.
No,
It's literally just this building fucking with them,
yeah,
which is so much spookier than seeing anything ghostly, I think.
yeah. And not only are the ghosts fucking with them and messing around with time, they've replaced all their food with just one moldy apple.
Yes, yes. I thought that was a bit mean.
I feel that's worse than just eating all the food.
Yeah.
All the not all the food's gone. It's like it's as if
It's just
it's
moldy.
yeah. You've like most of the food is gone, and you've left just one moldy thing in there. Oh, ghosts. I tell you
Ghosts,
what,
honestly.
real pieces of work. Ghosts. Sure, there are some nice ones. Not all ghosts, everybody, but these ghosts, absolute wrongins. I feel like the only way they could have made that worse would have been like if they'd put the wrappers back in.
Yes.
Like
And some
if
crumbs.
like if they'd gone, oh, it's okay, everybody, our sandwiches are all gone. but I have got this entire box of celebrations, and they open them, and it's just bounties and empty wrappers. You would be
Ah,
livid.
dreadful. Evil
Absolutely,
ghosts.
absolutely raging. Thankfully, though, they have got loads of water though, so they're not going to die of thirst. Don't worry, everybody. But also, don't worry about it too much, because this is just a problem, and they start to lose their temper a little bit. Like the psychic guy is meant to be on a film set. Another one, I
Yes.
think, is it Lance or one of the others that suggests that maybe this is an old building, so maybe electromagnetic fields and
Yes.
things
Oh,
like that.
I think that's, yeah, it's the psychic guy, Houston, trying to sort of rationalize it, because it's very clear at this point that he's not psychic at all. He is just an actor that they've employed to be their psychic, and they're feeding him lines,
Yeah,
which I thought was, again, a very cool character point
I
for this
loved his
guy.
bit where his psychic reading of the bathtub is
Yeah.
almost word for word what the janitor has said.
Yes, yes. And they cut the filming and they're like, was that too much? Was that a bit too much? And they're like, no, it was brilliant. Well done. Fantastic. Your best work.
Yeah, so he is saying, oh, maybe it is just
Mm.
that our technology has gone awry because it makes the time run more slowly here. Um, and I guess this is also important why the camera guy had to have a call with his wife earlier on. It showed that his phone worked. Now it doesn't. No one can make any
Yes.
calls. Um, yeah, so they really start to. I think that at some point they all just sit down and go to sleep, and then they wake up again, and it is now they wake up when the light, the big sort of studio light they have, falls over
Yes.
and smashes. And now also they do not have a powered piece of lighting anymore. They
Yes,
just
they've
have
only got their cameras.
they've only got their portable sources of light. And also we're in a very specific era of technology where you have a mobile phone but not a smartphone. So that isn't a
Yes.
torch.
No torches.
No
I
torches. Torches are separate entities at this time, at this point in history.
I
Um,
did like the supernatural aspect of the hospital slowly whittling down their resources.
yeah,
That was, yeah, I thought that was very good. It was a very sort of psychological way of dealing with people.
and I think this is also the point where like our I think it might be. If it's not now, it's close enough anyway. Where a TJ, a camera operator, basically goes, "No,
Yeah. Nope.
sick of this.
Yeah.
The lights have just gone out. I will like we've been here for now. What our friends, the cameras tell us, is in excess of 24 hours. They've basically gone the whole way around, and it is now the night time on the second night. They've not seen daylight. They've not found a way out. One of their friends is missing. The food has disappeared. Now the light sources are going. He finds himself like a gurney and thinks,
Yeah, he rams the
I will
doors.
I will
Yeah.
ram the door. And despite the fact that they're saying, oh, don't damage the doors, this is going to come out of your cut. And a
Yeah.
little bit of filmmaking aside, I feel like someone told the actor playing this character as well, because he doesn't have to decelerate before he runs into that door. He's
Yes.
like,
Yes. It's like, if we damage this building, we will have to pay. And not in a filming way, in a genuinely filming Grave Encounters way.
yeah, in a filming this film way, you cannot
Yes.
break this abandoned hospital that we've been given to film in, be it an abandoned hospital or a soundstage. I haven't looked up the trivia to see where
Yeah.
they actually filmed it, but I feel like he very carefully does a bit like when you're doing play fighting with one of your, you're wrestling with one of your siblings or something like that, and you pretend you're going to do a big jump on them,
Oh
but
yeah,
then
you
you
don't really.
then you accidentally jump to the side, or they put your weight on your own hands and knees rather than jumping on them. This is how he rams the door down. But on the third attempt, back in the film now, they do knock it down, and it's just a corridor. It's just
Yeah,
another corridor.
it should be the outside of the
Yeah,
building, but it just goes on into another corridor. I
it's
think
just
that is my favorite bit of the
yeah,
film, is them.
it is wonderful. I think this is one of the
Yeah,
most effective bits, because they also establish, because at first like, oh, we've just got turned around and we're at the wrong side of the building, but then they come back and the death awaits.
it's still on the doors.
Yeah, so it is the doors, and it's just an infinite asylum. I mean, what was your take on this? I thought about this more, and I will touch on the sequel as we come to the end, because it kind of explores it a little bit more
Mm.
about this inability to escape from the asylum. But do you feel like is it their perception that the was your takeaway from now? Is it their perception that that the ghosts are altering, or are they truly manipulating the physical space? And those, they are
Yeah.
just looping this thing around like a Pac-Man maze.
I mean, from this point, like this really high of, oh shit, we can't actually escape. I feel like the film starts to make its like downward curve from here.
Descent here, yeah.
Yeah, it's slight descent, yeah, as some of the reviews have said. I liked to think at first, and again, I think certain aspects of later bits kind of take away from that, but the aspect that the building itself isn't haunted by people, it's a haunted building.
Mm-hmm.
So the building itself is the monster. It's absorbed, people's lives, people's experiences, and it's the thing that is fucking with them. So it's the thing that's curving around them. So it's kind of trapped them in its own living dimension.
Yeah. And it is incredibly effective. And we just see
Mm.
time after time now, this begins to happen. So we see them, they look for a fire escape, and the fire escape is just a corridor.
Yeah, it's just
Once they're beyond there, they try to go to the roof access to get to the roof, and the roof access is just
a
wall.
blank wall.
Yeah, so there is no way for you to escape. They try to get out of some windows, but the windows are barred. They can't escape from them. It's, it becomes fairly hopeless fairly quickly. I'm trying to think now. I don't think they find Matt until some other people have been got,
Yes, I
right?
think they're wandering around these endless corridors for I think about 2 days. They say like they're getting slowly more dehydrated. They haven't eaten food in a while. You can see they're all losing it a little bit. And I think they realize on the map, they find one of the maps in the hospital, and they realize they're only like 2 corridors away from where they started. They haven't actually made any progress in this building. And then again, I think the point where this movie starts to go downhill is they meet a ghost.
Yeah.
Uh, they go into a room, and there's a woman standing in a corner, and she turns around, and she does that very classic 2000s ghost movie thing where her mouth opens really wide and her eyes
Yeah.
go black. And I think that's a very certain era of horror movie making, is when you get that happening.
Yeah. And
And she chases them.
I
Yeah.
feel like that dates a little bit because obviously at the time, and again, don't want to cast shade upon this film with the power of hindsight here, that was probably riding the wave of where this began. This effect began to be used for ghosts. It's just unfortunate that now you can create that probably with a filter on your phone.
Yes.
You can do the black eyes ghost kid and big spooky mouth on Instagram today, I would imagine, certainly on
Yes. I
Snapchat.
mean, I've seen, is it Lights Out, the short horror movie on
Yes.
YouTube with
Yeah.
the, yeah. It gives me that. I mean, it's a terrifying short film, but
Yeah.
it's that same kind of era of filmmaking.
Yeah, you begin to get these effects now where normal looking kid or normal looking person becomes sort of a distorted monster while doing a big sort of inward breath scream.
Yeah.
And then again, you bolt. They hide. Some of them hide in like a
A
cupboard.
cupboard.
Yeah,
And
they
they
hide.
lose Houston, I think.
Yeah, they lose Houston. I tell you what, I will give credit to Houston as an actor here. His what we now have as his death scene, where he is Silence of the Lambs style. You see his torch going out, but we're watching through one of the fixed cameras, one of the one of the night vision cameras here, and I can only assume that they did just put this actor in the dark,
Just put him in the darkness and just had him.
feel his way
He
down the
doesn't look
corridor.
like acting. He looks very lost.
Yeah, he's either a phenomenon, like you know, maybe mime was the thing he really excelled in at acting school. Um, Either that, or they did just put this poor man in the dark and get him to feel his way down a corridor. I mean, it's all right for him. A ghost isn't really going to get him. Um, but there's just something wonderful about like when he starts to get scared and when doors start to open, the fact that he takes his backpack off his back and sort of holds it in front of him like a little
Kind of
shield.
start to feel for him.
Yeah, yeah. He's not a. I mean, he's a a little bit of a charlatan, but he's not
He's
presented
not a
as a
bad
baddie.
guy.
Yeah,
He was trying to help. There were sort of sections of film where you could see him like trying to look after Sasha a
yeah,
little bit, so he does get humanized.
yeah.
Yeah.
He is, he's a perfectly nice guy, and then, you know, just get sort of ghost thrown across
Yeah,
a.
it's the first time you see one of the deaths on screen, and it is a little bit underwhelming because I think he just gets sort of force choked
Yeah, he gets
at the
force
end of the
choked a
corridor
bit and then sort of
and then
tossed down.
chucked.
So yeah, green screen Darth Vader like picks him up and throws him, I
Yes.
guess.
Yes.
And then that's it. Then we
Yeah,
don't see
that's
the like
goodbye
of him again.
Houston. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
he's
I think
off.
I have a particular issue with the deaths in particular, I think, which I don't know if now is the time to discuss it
Oh,
or
if it is,
when we
please.
finish the film. I feel like their deaths should have linked more to what they were like at the beginning of the film or what they were discussing in like the setup to them investigating the haunting. Because Houston's whole thing with being a fake psychic who, he's very obviously he's been told to do it, but he's pretending to be able to see and talk to these ghosts. It doesn't sort of wind up in any satisfactory way. He just gets choked.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
yeah,
you've
there's a death
thrown.
for a character later on where he gets, I mean, spoilers for later on in the podcast, he gets dragged into the tub uh
Yeah.
in the bathroom. But that was very much Houston's thing, was he was talking about that. So I assumed that would be how he would die, but it seems very unrelated.
Yeah, it does. Like you've made the mistake here, filmmakers, of over a decade ago of now having two people that write ghost stories
Yes.
talk about these things.
Where's the setup and payoff?
Yeah, I mean, now I'm thinking of it, like Houston being a, if you'd have maybe fed into him rather than being a paid actor, make him like a, an established, like, I'm not a psychic. He
Mm,
admits he's not a psychic, but have him know what his death is going to be. Have the ghosts only talk to him and tell him that this is how you're going to die and
yes.
this is how we're going to get you, and have no one believe him because you've just lost it. You're just hungry and scared, and then have him
Yes,
get
they
got.
actually start to talk to him.
Oh,
Yes.
have him be told how all of them are going to die and them not believing him. My goodness. Next
Oh,
Halloween, everybody.
right. Grave Encounters 3. We're doing the one that
Yeah,
didn't get made.
call us Vicious Brothers.
Yes.
We'll extend it to the Vicious Siblings. We'll all get involved. Yeah, so yeah, you are right. Like linking it to the people, because now I guess this is where we are, and where some people will criticize. I guess your mileage may vary. For some people, I'm sure you rub your hands together at this part of the film and go, finally, it's getting interesting.
Yeah.
Spooky things are going on.
Spooks are starting.
Whereas others, it's like, oh, you've kind of lost it now, because it does become a little bit of a, like a bit of a smorgasbord of what's happening. So Sasha has got like hello written on her back
Yeah.
in, is it, am I being, it is something like hello, or there is
It's
like,
yeah, I think she gets hello carved into her back, which
yeah,
is again very, very spooky because she was the one with the dicta thing, trying to talk to the ghosts. I
yeah.
think she wakes up, or they keep trying to have like people on watch so that they don't encounter something spooky while they're all asleep, but then they fall asleep and this happens.
And this happened, and she's got like her hello painfully carved into her back, like big old block capital letters. They're
Mm.
not saving much room if they want to have an ongoing conversation.
No. Just hi.
Yeah. Like, yes, just go hi, save the room.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine if she said, "How are you?" My goodness,
Yes, gosh.
especially as they're not doing. I guess it would depend where the ghosts are from. If they were like British ghosts, they'd be like, "Oh, not so bad, can't complain."
Yeah, how you doing?
Yeah. Oh, I've had worse, I suppose.
Yeah, just I'm doing.
Yeah, same shit, different day. Yeah, it is. Um, yeah. So she has these things carved in her back, and they're trying to look into these as well. They find Matt at this point. He is in. Oh, before they find Matt, they've also got patient bands.
Yes, they wake up with patient vans with their names on.
Yeah. So the printer still works.
Yes,
Nonsense.
yes.
I've suspended my disbelief only for so long. You have a working printer in a public building.
Yes, ghosts are very good at printing.
Yeah. That's where all the ink in your cartridge goes to, the ghost dimension.
Yeah, that makes
It's
sense.
because ghosts are printing all day long. That's why after only 2 print jobs, your printer's like,
Ah,
soz mate, not enough cyan, I'm afraid.
so it's gone to the ghost dimension.
Yeah, they've got hospital bans to print for people imprisoned in an infinite vortex like that. They need cyan to do printing. Only cyan is readable in for ghosts.
Yeah.
They're blind to the other two areas of light.
Yes. Don't you know?
Yeah, if you ever want to keep a secret from a ghost, write it in magenta, everybody. They won't get it. Can't see it. So yeah, they printed them bands that have got their names on them. So I mean, in a lot of other circumstances, if that was a wedding, what a lovely personal gift you've taken the
Yes,
time to
yes.
make.
Personal gift from your time in the Infinite Asylum.
But in the Infinite Asylum, spookier than anything, disquieting. So they're there, and then yeah, they meet Matt, who is not only wearing one of these bands all of his own, he's got the uniform.
Yes, yeah, he's been dressed up as a patient.
He's been dressed up
And
as a
yeah,
patient, and they pick him up off the floor because he's not really making very much sense, but he quite passively just comes with them and indicates that there is a way out of the hospital. Of course there is, when you're better.
yes. I think he says something about how he will fix them. I think that's
Yeah. And then I think for us as an audience, we're immediately conjured as of this doctor
yes.
who we haven't seen yet. And yeah, he'll sort us out. He'll sort us out when we're better. And then we just hit like a 10-minute roller coaster. So
Yeah, just running.
gets people run. There's more just ghosts appear like in a corridor and chase someone down.
I think there's a ghost on a ceiling.
Yeah, ghost on the ceiling is I think just after poor old TC
Yes,
gets,
doesn't get to go home to his
yeah,
wife and child.
because instead he gets slurped off into the bath full of blood, and disappeared in their little bathtub to Narnia. So he's gone.
Yes. I
And
thought that
then
was quite a good spook. Again, I think it was sort of done to the wrong character, but having someone dragged into the water and then immediately the bath tips over, but there's nobody
it's
inside.
gone. I feel like TC gets that one just because it's like, okay, which character are we done with? We probably want to keep you and you for the end. Uh, we're kind of done with TC at this point, so off he goes. Top
Into the
Cat has gone
bathtub.
into the bath and he's off. Never to be seen again. Possibly that's his tongue we see later, because then they
Yes. I was watching this with my very not horror loving partner. I made him watch it with me, and he assumed I don't think is true, but was quite a good interpretation that the patient ghosts that we keep seeing are actually the crew members.
after they've been got,
Yes,
they become a new
a
ghost.
ghost. Yeah, so he assumed that the ghost on the ceiling was TC because we
Yeah.
only sort of see it for a brief moment, but I don't think it was,
Yeah, so
unfortunately.
we see a tongue, and then we look up
Yeah.
at the ceiling, and it is a ghost that then chases them out to another bit where they run into a room, and then there's horrible big black
Oh yeah,
arms.
arms coming out in it's a very YouTube horror-esque fashion. I'm pretty certain I've seen that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can make arms come out of a wall again. To be fair, the makers of Snapchat probably owe this film a lot of ideas. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we can do this.
You can do
Like,
that. You can make that a filter.
we can make that filter so that just exists for everybody right now. So yeah, they continue to run around, and then we get ourselves to another corridor where they're kind of cornered. They're at an ancient, not an ancient, a 1940 like late 1930s lift shaft that they're looking down. No elevator, and then in in many a hospital drama, in fact, where many a fictional doctor would meet their death, like Joey Tribbiani, maybe even.
Yeah.
um, is it? There is a strange thing that Lance goes to just wrestle a ghost off camera for a minute.
Yes, I think he manages he runs away and you're like, Lance, you do realize this hospital constantly changes around you. You're not going to get back to where you started. He runs off to find like something to prise open the lift doors.
Yeah, and then
And then I think
we see him
Sasha
encountered
gets
by a ghost.
attacked.
Yeah, Sasha
Yeah.
gets, and then those two are fighting with a ghost off camera.
He's having a wrestle with a ghost.
Yeah, they're literally like they're like you hear Lance wrestling with a ghost. Sasha's like, tag me in. She
Yeah.
runs off to fight with him, and then Matt, at this point, obviously, he's round the twist. He's not making any sense, and he probably thinks to himself at this point, I mean, maybe it's the sanest idea he's had the whole time. He's like, oh, fuck this, I'm jumping down this left shaft.
Yes. It's again, it's one of those things. It's quite an affecting shot. Is that he takes the camera with him,
Yeah,
so he's got a little handheld camera, and then you watch from the one of the standalone cameras that he set up outside, and you just see him tip into the lift, and then you see the from the camera's view as it falls and then hits the ground.
yeah.
Which is again quite an interesting way of doing it inside this miasma of strangeness.
All these weird sort of hospital items that are going on. And to be fair, it depends. If I was sure that that didn't mean the ghosts had won and got me, I think I'm petty enough for that to be
Yeah.
my exit of this film. I'd be like, you didn't kill me.
Yes. I think at that point they'd been walking around for, is it 3-4 days?
Yeah, and goodness knows, I mean,
Yeah.
he's had a
And we
costume
don't know,
change.
yeah. He's been doing other things off stage.
Yeah, he could have been gone for weeks. Goodness knows how many baths he's disappeared down and got
Yes.
back
Oh
up.
God, yeah.
Um, so finally, when we just have our two left, they discover, so Lance and Sasha discover that Matt has gone down the lift shaft. And actually, this is maybe why, thinking back on this, maybe I feel like his death is just, he doesn't disappear like the others. He hasn't been
Yes,
vanished like the
that's
others.
right. You see his body. It's the first time you actually see, I suppose, apart from Houston, but they don't come across his body in the
Yeah.
corridor.
So as far as we're concerned, even we've seen other characters just see him be dead on the floor. So he is gone. And then they resolve the fact that the one thing is that all of the hospital buildings are linked by underground tunnels. So they've resolved that fine.
We'll just walk to another building.
Yeah, they floated this idea earlier on, and everyone was like, "No, tunnels are the creepiest. I'm not going down there."
Yes.
And they say, "Right, okay, we'll try it. What other choice do we have?" So the two of them go down, and again, they find a similar situation that it's just infinite corridors. They're walking
Yeah,
for
you don't really know what else they expect. Is like, oh, if we walk far enough, maybe the building won't be haunted anymore.
yeah, like they reach the limit. They just get to the end of the map, and we can't generate any more
Yeah.
haunts.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I do sometimes think that with ghosts. What is their operational limit? Like how
Yes. Do they
far
have
away?
like an AOE
Yeah,
area that they can?
yeah. Like if you were being haunted, I know sometimes they, oh, it's the ghost's folly, but can they cross international borders? If you got a flight, if you're on a holiday,
Yes.
like at what point is a ghost? Like if you took to a really, really extreme lifestyle, I mean, I'm going to go to the South Pole. Is a ghost going to go?
Fine.
No. What if you get a job? What if you get a job at sea? Can a ghost follow you to sea?
Yeah, haunted oil rig.
Yeah.
It's like that question with the demon from It Follows, like how if you just keep crossing, if you just keep getting planes, can they not?
You'd have to work out, like you could, technology is a wonderful thing. For once, a use for AI that I didn't find incredibly
Oh yeah,
boring.
yes.
You could ask Copilot, how long would it theoretically take you to walk to Australia? And you would go to Australia and then you would leave in 99% of the average time it would take you to walk
Yes.
to Australia and then go to the opposite. And just do that
You'd be
constantly.
great. Be
You'd
out
be,
of money pretty quickly, but you'd
yeah.
be great.
And if you happen to meet someone along that time that you were happy to pass it on to, you got loads of time, ages. And then you head back. You'll be all right. You can get by. Just adequate planning in your life. Yeah, so they're walking down this corridor. We now see that they've had a fixed camera down there, and we see them on this. And at this point, we're not even counting up anymore. It just goes for weird scrambled
Oh yeah, the
numbers.
numbers are just flickering. They're like,
We've
yeah, who
we've run
knows?
out of numbers. There's been too many.
too many numbers have happened.
Yeah, it's counted over. The entire camera system has been millennium bugged, and we've got nothing anymore. And we sit there, and I was a little disappointed in this because unfortunately Sasha does disappear like 1980s Batman.
The funniest death in the whole. I have no idea. I think her just vanishing off screen would have been better than what they go for. When we've had no indication of this happening at any point in like any of the spooky stories leading up to this, or like any indications that the ghosts do this. They
Yeah.
just
They're lying and having a little sit down. They goes, oh, I'll tell you what's ever so tiring, walking infinitely. So
yes,
we'll have a sit down and a little sleep.
a little sleep,
They're
holding
cozied
each
up.
other.
They're cozied up, holding each other, and then the ghost Batman drops like a very slow smoke pellet, and it like just covers them, and then it just dissipates away, and she's gone.
She's kidnapped by mist.
Yeah,
It's beautiful.
yeah, and poor Lance is waking up like he's Commissioner Gordon. Batman's just said something and then has vanished, and he's like, "Where is she?" And so then he proceeds to, off camera, stay there until he's gone completely feral and mad, and until he's eating rats.
Yeah, you get an extended shot, which again is the only shot my partner couldn't watch, which I completely get is a bit sudden. He kills a rat on screen and eats it, and that's how you know
That
he's gone.
he's reached the rat eating stage.
Yes.
How long does it take you in infant hospital until again?
Yes.
I think I might be, maybe in a real life situation, the survival instinct would be strong, and I too would be bashing rats with a bit of bar and eating them. And
He does it pretty well. He's clearly had some
yeah,
practice.
the cut on that is really, again, I watched it and
It
like it's
is.
frame perfect to them going from, and obviously it's not like making films in the 1980s when you were just cruel to animals. You don't
No, it's not
actually,
kind of a holocaust, thankfully.
yeah, you don't just bash rats anymore. You cut to a pretend rat, which is probably made of, I don't know, chicken nuggets or candy floss
Yeah, corn
or
syrup.
yeah, corn syrup, just whatever else actors eat. And they frame perfect. The bash of this rat goes from actual rat to faux food rat, and he eats that, and then he thinks to himself, "What's that noise?" Having filled up on rats, he goes, "Let's wander down this corridor," and he finally finds,
I think he finds a door.
yeah,
Yeah.
and he finds an operating room, and it's the people operating in there, and he, unfortunately, like every other thing, they're doing a big operation, doing some lobotomies in there. There's orgy of evidence that this is they're bad doctors. He's got a blackboard with saying like lobotomize here, and this
Yes.
is
Yeah. Yes, and like really images of mid cutting people open,
yeah,
and just amongst all of it, demonic summoning devices. You've got a pentagram and a ram skull.
and a skull and some candles.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, okay. We're introducing this 5 minutes before the end of the film. Excellent.
Yeah, it won't be explained, but it's
No.
like, for gamers that watch the show, it's like when you towards the end of a Resident Evil game, and there will just be a room where there's a diary that goes, and it was this company all along, and this is how they discovered it, and this is the virus actually. There's just a room with an orgy of evidence in there as to what it is. So spooky man, that doctor, bad doctor, does bad science, but also he loves demons.
Ugh.
And he looks at all these things and then sees they're not apparitions in the same way they are. They don't have big eyes and wonky mouths so much. They
The
have,
doctor
oh,
does.
he does, doesn't he? Yes, he
He
does.
does. He does a little jump scare just for us.
The
I
others have just been
think.
doing some eyeliner.
Yeah, yeah.
Like his surgical assistants are just look like they've done a long shift. It's been a 20-hour day.
It's been years. It's been almost a century.
It's been ages. So they see him, they all sort of encroach upon our boy Lance, and then they get him. He's strapped to the table and he's having a big old scream.
Yeah,
then
I think he drops the camera in the way that he's sort of recording away, so you can't see what's happening, but you hear a lot of Lance screaming in the background.
Yeah, and then we get like a post-cut little video of him coming back, having had something done, we assume, to his brain, saying, something about being fine now, and he's going to get better, and he'll find a way.
Allowed to go home.
He'll be allowed to go home. I mean, have you seen the sequel, Georgia?
I have seen the sequel. I not again since I watched it at uni. I remember he doesn't get to go home. Spoilers.
No, he doesn't.
But it's not him. It's the actor who plays him.
Yes.
So they do like a double meta.
Yes. So Grave Encounters was a film that came out. So we are to assume that we now
they do like a Blair Witch 2 with it.
We live one step further towards our
Yes.
reality than the original film exists in. It's like in Marvel films that Marvel comics are also a thing in their universe that tell stories about the real people that live in their world. This
historical,
is like that.
Yeah.
So now in our real world, still a film to you and I, but to these people, Grave Encounters was also a film. I really wanted to be conscious of this because it begins with people on YouTube channels and podcasts weren't a thing in 2012 talking about whether the film was good or bad.
And here we are.
Yeah. And then the people who do a review of that, following an opening scene of many of the unfortunate things that people said and did when they were at college in 2011, 2012. Everyone's getting some in that one. Like, don't repeat anything you hear in this opening chapter in 2024. After that opening scene, basically the guy who does a YouTube review of Grave Encounters begins to hear from the hospital, and they go and investigate, and they go back, and then
that's right, it's like a Reddit user contacts them, and it's called Death Awaits.
Yeah, Death Awaits.
Yeah.
Emails them, and then there's a bit where the actor from the first one, he turns up again, and then the ghosts become a film crew because lots of cameras are floating around and doing filming.
But it turns out that the characters that were playing the actors, the actors who were playing the characters in the first film actually died in a very Blair Witch way.
Yeah, they're dead.
The guy who was playing Lance, he's actually still stuck in.
He is still stuck
like 9 years later, but he needs to finish the film in order to escape.
He's to finish the film in order to escape, and unfortunately,
which means killing everyone.
He means to kill everybody, but also the guy who's he's new Lance 2. He is also a filmmaker, and he's not having it. He said, "You want to be possessed and driven insane with these? I will be as insane as you. I've been here a
even
day.
Better." Yes.
Like, I'm not even hungry yet.
He's like, I think the ghost possessed Lance and like kill everyone and we'll let you go. And he's like, okay. And then the main guy does it anyway, but he's not possessed. He's fine. He just kills everyone.
And he just wants to actually make a film. And so basically Lance is absolutely crazy in the first one, and he's coming at it. He's a dangerous character. He's killed the jock friend. And then our main guy, who is quite a nerdy, scrawny filmmaker, just proves he's built different and goes, "No, fuck you," and kills him instead. And then Lance, unfortunately, spoilers for Grave Encounter 2, a big vortex opens and he gets slurped off to hell, I think.
Yes, I think that was implied.
Yeah, and then
like the many vortexes in this hospital, you don't know where they're going.
Yeah, and the new guy, the filmmaker, they probably realize this guy's got a better platform. He's not an actor that's been washed up, and admittedly our fault. He's disappeared from the scene for 9 years.
Yes, we are the reason he hasn't updated his spotlight in a while.
Yeah, but this guy, he's an up-and-comer. He's at film school. So we'll get him. And he met that producer in an earlier scene. So he's got contacts in LA.
They let him go.
Yes, they let him go, and he releases the film, and that's Grave Encounters 2 for you. But otherwise, fairly beat for beat. More, if it was possible, more big open eyes. But there we have the plot of Grave Encounters. Before we get to review it, Georgia, a little bit of a game that we like to play over here on Horror Hangout called the Name Game, where what we're going to do is I'm going to tell you the plot of a film which sounds suspiciously like Grave Encounters,
Okay.
which has a title which, in a very loose sense, the word would rhyme with Grave Encounters as well. So a lovely bit of wordplay to finish our
Okay.
evening. Let me just get the synopsis of Grave Encounters so I can ad lib what these look like here. So the synopsis of Grave Encounters is: they were searching for proof. They found it. A crew of paranormal reality television show locked themselves into a haunted psychiatric hospital. They search for evidence of paranormal activity as they shoot what becomes their final episode. So in this alternative one, a reality film crew, they get together in a studio to meet famous people that all share the first name and have a meet and greet with them. They meet Benson Phillips, Warneke, Caruso. They meet all of them. What could this film be called?
Oh, I don't know. I'm terrible at puns.
So they're going to meet these famous actors face to face. They meet. Think of some more examples. They meet Carradine. They meet Benson Phillips is a big one, obviously from my era. What other people have this first name? And of course, it rhymes with Grave Encounters. A man's name that
A
rhymes with
man's name
grave.
with grave encounters. It's going to be so obvious. And I'm
Let
going to have to
me.
assure you that I'm a writer who knows
And they
words.
meet Batista. There's a common one that wasn't like a massively outdated reference. They meet another person with that name. It is, of course, you'll kick yourself. It is Dave Encounters.
Yes.
They meet loads. They meet loads of people called Dave. Here's the second one. Unfortunately, that one was the most straightforward. A reality film crew. They get together and actually they think, I'm not going to go and film in a haunted house this time. I'm going to do a telethon to raise money for the benefit of the really courageous people that go round numerating how many chickens there are at the farms around the country. Ever so bold in doing this job. They need a lot of courage to do it. So we should raise money for them. What could this film be called?
Andy, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. For those playing along at home, this, of course, is Brave Hencounters.
Brave Encounters.
You see, you get right, right. You're gonna get your eye in, Georgia. I feel like
okay, I'm gonna do it. I can do this.
I feel I've got two more.
Okay.
I feel like this next one have got your name on it. So,
Okay.
a group of filmmakers, reality filmmakers, they actually go, you know what's really good? Like, seeing these spooky areas, we never see anybody ghosts here, so why don't we repurpose this building? So we're going to put on late night, unofficial, unlicensed music shows. We're going to play loads of electronic dance music, and we're going to rename this building. We're going to name it after the type of music we're going to play here. We're going to invite loads of people round to it. Yeah, it's going to be great. And the only thing is, we're not going to be filmmakers anymore. We will just stand on the door and decide who can come in and make sure there's no trouble that happens in the place that we've converted this hospital to.
It's definitely rave.
Yeah,
Rave something bounces.
it is the Rave Den Bouncers. Is
Yes.
what that is. You've got it. You've got your eye in. So I reckon this
excellent.
last one,
I can do it.
this last one, it'll roll off the tongue. So he says before he pulls out the most obscure rhyme I could find. Finally, a group of reality film makers, they go back to medieval times, and people there think they are churlish and rude and just quite silly, roguish characters. That's how they all describe them. But they make their living just hanging effigies and pictures and memorabilia all about the other host of the Horror Hangout podcast. They go around just mounting effigies of him all over medieval England, and people think they're ever so silly for it.
So Nave,
Yep.
Ben.
Yep, they're putting him up on the wall, doing all sorts.
I've lost the last word.
They are Nave Ben Mounters, is what
Nave
they are.
Ben Mounters. And you hate it.
To be fair, getting 50% of Nave Ben Mounters, I think, is an admirable feat.
What have you done to me?
You do realize, Georgia, I'm so sorry for this. The hours will pass. We'll be off this call. Your next, and then you'll wake up at 3 a.m. and you'll have thought of one. If you're only,
I will. It'll appear.
If you texted us a week later, guess what? I've got one. All that remains for us then is to rate our film for today. Grave Encounters. What do you think of it? We use our school ratings here, so A to F, pluses and minuses, absolutely allowed around here. How are you rating Grave Encounters?
I think I'll give it a C minus.
A C
for
minus.
effort.
And from your take of that, this was a good build-up, loses it in the final stretch, right? Yeah, I think I'm with you on a C minus. Interesting ideas. I think it's some films are timeless. Some films exist in the time they exist in, and some elements of it don't hold up as the way they might. And unfortunately, Snapchat has done a number on this movie.
Yes.
But there is a fondness there. Like, C's get degrees. It is like, it's got serviceable things to it. I like the invocation of old ghost haunting TV. I like some of the world. I love the idea of this infinite thing, that you've crossed this place that you can't come and get you. You can't just wake up in your house and it be an infinite asylum.
It's still
you've got to choose to go there. You've got to cross that threshold.
I like the idea that they've angered it some, especially again, I was going to mention with Matt and his smoking. He was specifically asked not to, and then he kept doing it, and I assumed that would come up later.
Yeah,
like maybe they'd find him dead and his mouth was stuffed with cigarettes or something.
Stuffed with those smoky cigarettes, or that was all he had left.
Yes,
no food, no water, just cigarettes. Yeah, that'll teach him. So like the version of your dad making you smoke an entire pack and he's busted you smoke all these cigarettes. Yeah, there we go. What else have I got to say for everyone? I mean, most importantly, thank you for listening, everybody. Oh, before I do that, thank yous. Most important, Georgia, where do people find you if they want to keep up with what you're doing, to follow things? Ben will be loading the show notes with links to everything you're working on. But where's the best place people can follow you in a world of dubious social media these days?
On most of the social medias, I am Georgia Cooked. So that's my name, Georgia Cook, ED. On Twitter, on Instagram, on Tumblr. If you're there, you'll find me there. I have a book out that you can find on Amazon at the moment called the Dracula Daily Sketchbook, which was a project I worked on last year during the Dracula Daily Substack. And you can find that. And I have a book coming out in June for Doctor Who, for the 15th Doctor, called Ruby Red. So look out for that.
Oh, well, quite close to my dad's birthday as well. Not sure my parents listen to this, but if they do, spoilers. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. I say this confidently and knowing that I'm giving this work to Ben because he does all the editing for us.
Thank you, Ben.
Put these, thank you, future Ben. We will put these in the show notes so you can catch up for these. For everyone else, though, thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show and you would like to hear more, or just, chuck us a few pennies to help us keep the lights on over here, you can become a patron over at patreon.com/horror hangout. Thank you to all our existing patrons today. We love you very much. Thank you to Taj Easton, our good friend, for our theme music. Thank you to Acast for hosting the show. Please consider giving us a cheeky rating or review. I do say sometimes, when Ben usually does this very tightly on script, you send us a review, a good one, not a bad one. My goodness, I'll give you no thanks for a bad one, but for a good one, I'll read it out. I'll give you a shout out on the show there. I'm willing to go rogue on these things. You can also find us if you want to chat to us live on the Facebook group. You can catch on the Facebook group, the Horror Hangout Board of Advisors. We are also all over Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, the lot. Have a look there, find us, interact with us. We have a Discord that we even put our eye on eventually, as every so often as well. Come and chat to us there about films you're interested in seeing. Come and talk to us about the movies. We always enjoy it. Do our best to interact every time anyone does. We will see you again for another film. I hesitate to say next week because it depends in which order Ben releases this dual release this week. But in the next week, physically in time, when you move forward, unless you're trapped in a haunted asylum, we're going to be getting together with some more friends, names TBC, depending on what we can do time zone wise. And we're going to be chatting about a zombie movie, George A. Romero's Land of the Dead, one of my favorites. So join us again for that, why don't you? Or also join Ben and Ed for lovely chat about Abigail, unless that was in the past, in which case I hope you already enjoyed it, but very in keeping for one where time has gone awry.
Yes.
Yeah, meta fiction. We've
It's
done
like
it.
you planned it.
We did this on purpose, everybody. Thank you so much again, Georgia, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you for having me.
In that case, for now, bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye.